Hey guys, as promised, I'm going to do a little video on punctuation, but honestly, I'm only doing this because you guys asked, but really the best resource is when you're able to see it. And, and that's what chapter 2 is. We've gone through the different types of sentences, what types of punctuation. We talked about that in class this week, so you can review that on our class recording that was emailed out to you guys. Commas, I know that there's this illusion, this elusive mystery regarding commas. And again, really, when you start looking at the rules, you know a lot of them. So don't stress out. I think where most people is that whole, the coordinating conjunction when it's before like and or so, and it's basically where that is heading off a phrase rather than making a compound. So if you see and or any of those that are actually making something compound, okay, you know that if it's making compound verbs, compound adjectives, compound, whatever, that there's no comma. But if you're seeing and so, it's not making something a compound. That's probably where you're going to have, it's more of a coordinated conjunction where it's actually a phrase after it. And so you would need that. But also audibly, when you hear it, there's going to be a natural pause that you will have with that. So don't overthink it. Don't overthink it, but definitely read through that. I think that's probably one of the most confusing ones because, when you list, you have commas. Also remember, when you're listing, there is a comma before the and. And there's actually an example of that because there's actually some really funny examples on that one, by the way. Because if you don't have that comma, then it does make those last two things a compound. And sometimes you don't want those together. So that is very specific on that. Dates, you know that. Days of the week, we talked about that. Offsetting information. Now, offsetting information is like you're talking. In fact, I'll just even use the example when visiting my friend from class, Julia Smith. And when it's talking about offsetting, if I took Julia Smith out, because right now I've got commas around it, but if I took it out, when visiting my friend from class, I discovered that we had a lot in common. The sentence is still sound. All you're doing, the reason that you are putting Julia Smith is you're trying to give some clarity. That's all that is. But the little tester is, if you can take that out, the sentence is still sound. So that's a little hint on that one. Quotations, definitely look at that one. And if, especially when the quotation is at the end, you'll notice that the comma is before the quotation marks. Okay. And then if the quotation is at the beginning of the sentence, you'll notice that the comma is within the quotations. So just kind of look at that one. Apostrophes. I just had a video on that. You need to go watch it because there's only two reasons why you would ever need an apostrophe: a contraction or a possessive noun. Possessive noun, and you will have some of those on that editing to correct it. Make sure you know how to do that appropriately. On page 40 and 41 of the chapter, I'm not sure if the pages got messed up or not, but you will see where I have put a paragraph for you to practice on. And then on the next page, I gave you the answers. So go through it. You can take any book for that matter, pull out a paragraph, type it, take everything out of it, and then go work it. And then go look back because then you have something to look at. Colons and semicolons, definitely look at that. The main thing on semicolons, well, there's a couple things I wanted to make mention of that. Conjunctive adjectives like however, therefore, there's just a whole lot of lists. There's a list of them. And I'm going blank, but you can look those up. But however, people get on the however train and they can't seem to get off. So first off, you need to be very careful if you're ever using however, that it's not redundant. And I've had students that it was very difficult. If you say that a lot, especially verbally, and if you write the way that you speak, sometimes it translates. Remember what I say verbally, and if I wrote it, doesn't always jive. So be very careful with that. But however, if however is the first word in a sentence, it is however, comma. If it is in the middle of the sentence, it's semicolon, however, comma. And it's same thing for therefore and the other ones. So just be really careful. But I am actually more concerned with the redundancy of that word. So just be very, very careful. Remember, we talked about this in class the other day. When you have redundancy, you are taking the focus off the content and you are putting it on the redundant word, which means no one is going to extract anything important from what you have to say. And if you didn't communicate and they didn't understand what you were trying to say, then we were not successful. So that's, I think I'm more concerned with the redundancy of however, but that's really the rule of thumb. If it's at the beginning, the comma follows it. If it's in the middle, it's semicolon, however, comma. Capitalization rules. Now y'all know these, but yet people don't practice them. You are important. Capitalize your name. The first letter of your first name, your middle name, and your last name. If you have, junior, senior, okay, that's capitalized. You're important, just like the personal pronoun I, because it represents you. You're important, you get a capital letter. States, counties, cities, things that are titles of people, first word in a sentence. Okay. That is really an oversight. You guys know better. You've been taught this stuff since elementary. Texting, I think, has been detrimental to writing because we get in this habit that, our phones are going to correct it for us. Well, they don't always. And they don't always pick up everything. Just like spell check is not always going to pick up a misspelled word. If it's a homonym, it's spelled correctly, it's not going to pick up the fact that you didn't use it correctly. Do you know what I'm saying? So these things. It goes back to what we were talking in class with writing being purposeful. Slow down. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to communicate? And make sure that you know how to do that. Again, all of these, you've been doing them, but there's a reason that you learn them. Days of the months and holidays. Now that's titles of books. Now, and that's an interesting one because if it's like article adjectives, you do not capitalize the article adjectives. You only are capitalizing in the titles the main words. When you're doing MLA, when you're setting up your bibliographies for your works cited page, you have to use correct capitalization, and you have to know how to capitalize it. Otherwise, I'm going to take points off. So please make sure that you do realize this. Ellipsis, we're going to get more into that when we get into academic writing and research and we talk about quotes. Because just because you're quoting something doesn't mean that you need a whole paragraph. Sometimes it's just a piece of something. So the ellipsis, it's only 3 dots. It can come before, in the middle, or after. And really what it represents is that you're telling the reader that there's some stuff that was in there, but you didn't need. I have a personal saying that use your ellipsis wisely, because be very careful with what you are taking away to put the ellipsis in, because you don't want to change the message, and you really want to honor what that person has said. Do not change what someone has said. And people do that. The news media, they've done that for like ever. Where they can actually change really the intent of what someone was saying and make them look bad. I think that we all have been a victim of that, where somebody hears a little piece of something and they make assumptions, and then it looks bad on us, and then we're trying to explain ourselves. Well, they were basically using the verbal ellipsis because they were leaving some things out. So just be really careful with that. I have some takeaway things. You definitely want to read through those. And then I have another practice from Fahrenheit 451, which is another one of my faves. For the English 101, we'll go over that next week. But so you do want to kind of go through that. Take it out, make a copy of it, and then do the editing on that. And I also next week will be supplying you guys with the editing marks, just so that we're all consistent on that. But honestly, guys, that's really it. Read through it. There's a lot of logic to it. You know it. It's just a matter of reminding yourself and then taking it the next step of why do you need to know this? Why is it important? Punctuation is utilized so people are able to read our writing in the manner in which we want it to be read. If you blow through all the punctuation when you're reading something, it takes away from comprehension. It can change a message. It can become very confusing. So punctuation in conjunction with grammar is extremely important. It is to make sure that our writing is clear and concise and people are receiving it the way we want it to be read, so they're getting what you're trying to say. And again, it's about communication, and it's just very important. So that is basically it. Just a couple little highlights on that. Your quiz is this Sunday. There will be an editing paragraph, so take your time. There's going to be classification. You got to know your parts of speech, and watch the videos. Practice some more. You could still use some of the other stuff and just kind of go, make it blank and do it again. Could you do it without looking at the answers? So that's going to be Sunday evening. Don't forget that your 2 reply threads are also due Sunday evening by 11:59. I will not be extending grace coming into this week. If your quizzes are not done, zeros will stand. And I was actually surprised when I opened it up last week where you guys could go back and take the quiz if you hadn't, and not many people took me up on that. So a little hint on the quiz. Go through everything that you absolutely know, 110%, you are totally confident on. Once you've done that, then go to your notes. I'm allowing you to use your resources because life is about knowing how to use your resources. So I'm cool with that. You have an hour to take the quiz. Plenty of time in order to do that. It's 50 points, but the editing paragraph, that's a big chunk of those points. Okay. So, go through, make sure that you've answered everything that you know for sure and for certain, and then go back and utilize your book. And I think that you'll see that your time management will be a little bit better, for the quizzes. Remember, once you start that quiz, the clock starts, and it will cut off at that, 60 minutes. Okay. All right, guys. So I hope you have a great weekend, and I look forward to class next week. Oh, one more thing on discussion boards. And this is more of my mama moment rather than instructor. Please be very careful with putting personal information in the discussion boards. And this is really something that started with the initial introductions and then going over into this week. Please do not put your phone number. Do not tell people where you work. People need to earn the right to know that those things about you. You guys have such sweet spirits. You're so kind, and I love how you encourage one another, and that's great. And I want you to continue to do that. If you want to reach out to someone individually, then I would encourage you to do that. But to blanketly put things out on the internet, especially personal information, is a very dangerous habit, especially in the technology age that we are currently in. So I care about you guys. I really do not want you to put yourself in a compromising position. And I also want to state, it's not just girls that become the victims of things like this. Guys, you too. So please be just really mindful and protective of that, and let people earn that right to know those things. So have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Bye.